Welcome back to Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. I wasn't quite prepared for the amount of conversation that was here, but let's just continue in this episode 5.2. So Sila is next. Sila smiles at you warmly. Hey there! During that march during the dungeon, we never got the chance to exchange a proper greeting. It is high time I shake your hand. I'd like to know more about you. Of course, ask anything. I'll answer honestly. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? I'm a little bit from Geb, a little bit from Katapesh, but mostly from the Knights of Iomade. I was accepted and began my training at 14. I belong to their ranks more than I belong to any other place. You've come to Mendev by a long road, haven't you? A very long one. Sila looks at you cheerfully. A traveller is expected to have amusing stories. Unfortunately, I only have 3 tales of any interest, and I'd like to save them for our next feast. Otherwise, I won't have anything to show for myself when it's time to start bragging. And that just won't do, especially since I'll win the night with my cautionary tale of a battle with chupacabras. Isn't your attitude toward life and war too carefree, especially for a paladin? Was that a hint of reproach? If you're just asking, then no, I don't think so. You have to know when it's time for jokes and when it's time for mourning, the right moment for joys and for sermons. And sometimes a good travelling story can be all those things, if it entertains and purifies the souls. That story about the chupacabras is one of the good ones. Picture a small town in Kadira, and down in the dungeon there's 2 murderers waiting to be executed. The gallows are already built for them, the rope's been bought, but sometimes life takes a surprising turn. Suddenly, a paladin of Iomade appears in the doorway and offers the murderers a deal. If they go with her to fight some monsters, they'll live. If they survive, that is. There's a big difference between imminent death and probable death with a glimmer of hope, wouldn't you say? So here we are, travelling through the desert, me and my friend, a priestess of Sarenrae, along with a little ratfolk fellow who'd asked for our help, and the 2 cutthroats. We get to the ratfolk village and see their bodies lying around, all drained dry. We figured we'd have to fight vampires. That's how the little ratfolk described the monsters who attacked their village. That's why we went in all brazen-like. The sun was high and the vampires could attack until dusk. But we never got a chance to look around. Black shadows, quick as the wind, attacked us from all sides. Not vampires, but chupacabras. One of the lads we pulled from the gallows got killed right away. The second one ran for his life. That left me, the ratfolk, and Kira. That was the name of the priestess, and we all steeled ourselves for the fight of our lives. And just when we thought the end had come, with the chupacabras surrounding me like a pack of dogs around a bear, our ratfolk friend wounded and down, and the teeth of the quickest of those blasted monsters clenched on Kira's shoulder. Right then, when all hope was lost, the other lad from the gallows suddenly comes running back. He kills the beast attacking Kira. I'm sure you know what a turning point in a fight looks like. Well, this was it. A moment before we were lost, and a moment later we had it back under control. The chupacabras dropped dead one by one. The little ratfolk is reunited with his family who were hiding in the basement. The priestess and I closed the eyes of that boy from the gallows who saved us. It was a shame he didn't survive the fight. May the gods keep his soul in his journey through the afterlife. I expected a more cheerful story, and now I'm sad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I like to remember that one. For me, it's a story about hope. Had it not been for that mercy, Milos, that was his name, would be hanging from a noose, and me, Kira, and all the ratfolk would be dead in that village. Someone told me that a kind deed done by an unkind person is 100 times more precious. By the same token, an evil done by a noble soul is 100 times more horrifying. That's what I really wanted to say. The chupacabras were just a good starting point. What made you become a paladin of Iomade? Sila's gaze sharpens momentarily, then she sighs. That's a serious question, and a good one. You should ask it of your companions. But it's a long story. To start with, 12 years ago I was nothing like the person I am now. I roamed the streets of Solku with the other homeless orphans. I stole, I fought, I was a hired sword for a bit. Not the proper origin for a paladin, is it? Back then, Solku was a city of orphans, widows and widowers. Gnolls decimated the city regularly. My parents were among their victims. People there heard about new deaths before they'd finished mourning their previous losses. One day, a group of knights of Iomedae brought a glimmer of hope to the city. But while others saw them as saviors and protectors, I was busy pricing up their noble horses and their gleaming mithril armor, wondering just how much one of their pretty swords would fetch. A thief lives one day at a time, that's what they say. I was the type that never thought past the next job. Anyhow, I was able to sneak into the knight's camp and steal one of their mithril helms. Sila pauses, her voice sad and measured. And I was right there when a gnoll attacked the helm's owner. Asimi was her name, and dealt a blow to her unprotected head. A gnoll, like all those others she'd fearlessly driven from the gates of Solku. That one blow was fatal. But who was really to blame for her death? The gnoll attacker or the young thief named Sila? Even a seemingly small misdeed can have terrible consequences. Yes, you're 1,000 times over. You're right 1,000 times over. I hate to say it, but I just didn't see it back then. And if I had never got that lesson, my eyes would probably never have been opened. Who knows what would have happened to me if it wasn't for Asimi and her bravery, and her death. Maybe the world would know Sila as a bandit, not as a knight and protector of those in need. There is a saying I like to remember. People rarely find redemption on their own. Someone must show them the way. But you were asking what brought me into the ranks of Iomedae's warriors. We all chose the paladin's path for our own reasons. Some are guided by nobility of spirit, some by a desire to fight injustice. I became who I am through penance and a debt unpaid. The day Asimi died protecting my city, I wanted to kill myself for the terrible guilt I felt. But then I realized it wouldn't make the world any better, and I decided that instead I would try to take her place. I would become who she had been and protect the innocents that she would no longer be able to protect. What are the principles that paladins of Iomedae follow? Sila smiles. I'll tell you. I like to recite our code. It feels like I've said it 1,000 times, but it never gets old. There is strength in these words. After a pause, she begins, her voice slow and meditative. I will learn the weight of my sword. Without my heart to guide it, it is worthless. My strength is not in my sword, but in my heart. If I lose my sword, I have lost a tool. If I betray my heart, I have died. I will have faith in the inheritor. I will channel her strength through my body. I will shine in her legion, and I will not tarnish her glory through base actions. I am the first into battle and the last to leave it. I will not be taken prisoner by my free will. I will not surrender those under my command. I will never abandon a companion, though I will honor sacrifice freely given. I will guard the honor of my fellows, both thought and deed, and I will have faith in them. When in doubt, I may force my enemies to surrender, but I am responsible for their lives. I will never refuse a challenge from an equal. I will give honor to worthy enemies and contempt to the rest. I will suffer death before dishonor. I will be temperate in my actions and moderate in my behavior. I will strive to emulate Iomedae's perfection. Thank you. I have learned everything I wanted to know. I hope I didn't bore you. Ask me something else if you like. Irabeth said your friend Janna Aldori is missing. Do you know where we should look for her? Irabeth is worried about her fighters. I understand that. I wanted to look for Janna myself, so I didn't distract you, but since you're in this too, I could use some help. Janna and I met in Canarbras a few days ago and just hit it off. We went drinking together. We went to that unforgettable celebration together too, but we got separated in the crowd, so we should start looking from the main square. That's where I last saw her. Sila frowns. Janna is a good fighter even if she is green. She couldn't have become an Eldori otherwise. I hope that means she's alright. What do you think of what's going on in Kenabres? It's complete chaos. It's lucky we're here to handle it, right? Sila smiles brightly, then she gives you a worried look. The way I talk bother you? I know I can seem blasé. Many good people and our protector Terendelev died here in Kenabres. A paladin of Iomade is expected to be properly respectful and solemn. But I prefer to face my troubles with a smile and a bit of common sense. Grief is a weapon they'll use against you. It can undermine a warrior's spirit. It is better we hold off on grief until we've driven the last demon and cultist from the city. There is wisdom in the traditions of mourning, and one shouldn't reject them, the more so if inappropriate merriment could offend other mourners. Many people's loved ones perished in Kenabres. Sila sighs. You may be right, I should keep myself more in check. Better discipline, more self-control, qualities suited to a paladin. Is fighting demons all you want, or are you looking for something more? How about covering myself in glory and becoming the hero of 100 ballads, or at least a dozen if they're lively ones? Sila's eyes shine cheerfully. Anyway, to be more serious, the area around the Worldwound is the best place for a paladin who wishes to defend the weak and serve good. Being part of the crusade is reward enough for me, but there is something that worries me. I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing my brothers in arms, but the Eagle Watch and the other orders are focused on just one aim, the war against the Worldwound. That's why they can sometimes overlook the smaller things, ordinary misfortunes, you know. I always liked being a wandering knight because any moment I could get up and go help a poor rat folk whose family had been kidnapped, or an old woman whose favourite dog had gone missing. So here's my answer. I don't have some big important goal, but I will be happy to help those who need it. A little bit here and there. Thank you for speaking with me. Until next time. See you. We have Hilor. A tall, athletic man greets you. His hair is prematurely grey and shorn close to his head in a military style. He is lean and well-groomed, and a monocle twinkles coldly in his eye. The bold set of his jaw and his large but agile frame attest that here is a man who is always ready to be on the move. Greetings, I am Hilor, Venture Captain of the Pathfinder Society. I am the superior officer among Pathfinders in this region of Mendev. However, the Society is running almost no operations here right now. Besides me, there are almost no Pathfinders here. Actually, I'm only stuck here because of an old feud with the demon worshipper known as the Spinner of Nightmares. I've had to work alone without the support of the Society, but I've made a lot of acquaintances among the local mercenaries and daring fighters. If you need any good fighters for an honest cause, talk to me. Tell me about your confrontation with the Spinner of Nightmares. It all began with a task of the Pathfinder Society. I arrived in Nerosian with my team to investigate the sudden death of a famous crusader, Baron Falron. We soon focused in on a small hospital for the wealthy, where Falron was being treated shortly before his death. It turned out that a gang of Baphomet's cultists calling themselves the Labyrinth of Mind had gotten a foothold at the hospital. They were obsessed with twisting the minds of their victims and targeted fragile people too weak to resist. The hospital was filled with perfect victims, isolated for weeks from the outside world, completely helpless. And when they returned, they were different, almost normal. But the moment they heard a certain phrase, something dark awoke in their mind and they transformed into servants of Baphomet, ready to lie, betray and even kill. The Labyrinth of Mind was preparing to infiltrate all the elite circles in Mendev. But Baron Falron stopped them. He was too loyal to his oath and too resistant to their spells. He fought for his freedom until the strain broke his heart. We opened and cleaned the city of Baphomet's Pit of Vipers. Their den was a cradle of sin and filth. They cast spells on each other, and their loathsome fantasies stepped real from their minds into the world. They dreamt of horrible and forbidden things, and they fought like mad. We burned the place to the ground and slaughtered everyone we could, but the leaders of the cult were able to flee, and they were set upon revenge. They abducted my daughter Lori, who served under my command in the Pathfinder Society. They left me a note full of tart insults, mockery, and sneers. From that note I learned the name of my enemy, the Spinner of Nightmares. A few months later I confirmed that she was the leader of the Labyrinth of Mind. My hunt had begun. I would get Lori back at any cost. Hilor grits his teeth with bulldog determination. I want to know more about you. What exactly are you interested in? I am a common Pathfinder. There are many others like me. Fate and my orders brought me to this land. How did you end up here? Okay. I was working on an assignment for the Pathfinder Society, and then a demon worshipper named the Spinner of Nightmares abducted my daughter Lori. For the past 3 years I've been trying to save her. During this time I've become a specialist in scouting demon territory. I've even planted agents among the cultists. Truth be told, in pursuing the Spinner of Nightmares I've been acting more on behalf of Queen Galfrey than the Pathfinder Society. It's a long story, maybe I'll tell you the rest of it sometime. Hilor frowns grimly. This Spinner of Nightmares is a true spawn of the Abyss. I've fought her many times, but I've never been able to seize her by the throat. Tell me about your daughter. Hilor smiles, showing his healthy white teeth. As a girl, Lori was just an angel. We lost her mother early on. She was left to follow my example, a drifter with little idea how to talk to a 10-year-old girl. But even with such questionable parenting, Lori managed to grow into a wonderful girl. Brave, smart, beautiful, and entirely unbearable. She always argued with me about everything. When Lori was 18 and told me she was going to be a Pathfinder, all I said was alright. I knew there was no use to try and talk her out of it, and she was a fine Pathfinder. Hilor's fists clench with a painful-sounding crack. I will never forgive the Spinner of Nightmares for taking my girl from me. Tell me about the Pathfinder Society. The Pathfinder Society is a global organization that unites opportunists and adventurers of all kinds. We explore the world and uncover its secrets, travel, and sometimes face down threats. In times of trouble, the latter becomes our primary focus. We are driven by curiosity and the desire to make the world a better place, and of course some seek profit or hunger for glory. But in any case, it is hard work. They might send you anywhere on a mission. Weaklings have little place in the society, it is more for seasoned fighters. There are society lodges in many cities. The closest one is in Rosian. They are each led by venture captains, that's like me. The Grand Lodge is in Absalom, the center of the world. The Decemvirate sits there, the anonymous council of our leaders. I have no more questions. If you have any questions, come to me. This is where we can recruit mercenaries. First one will cost 4,500, or at this level it will cost me 4,500. You can also respec your companions and your main character here. Just a quick little break here. There we go, Irabeth next. Irabeth rubs her red and tired eyes. Any success? How is the city? What is our main objective? You heard what that demon said. They're going to desecrate the wardstone and blow up the whole barrier around the Worldwound. That would be an even worse disaster than the Worldwound's expansion before the Second Crusade. Not only Kenabris, but every city with a wardstone will be destroyed, including the capital. We cannot allow that no matter what. We will retake it, even destroy it if we must. Iomede's gift must not become a weapon of the Abyss. These wardstones, what are they? Yeah, we've had that before. Allow me to ask a few personal questions. Frowning a little, Irabeth nods. Please. But I must warn you, there are some things I don't have the right to discuss. Where are you from? I was born in Kenabres. I grew up on a farm just outside it. But my way back home lay at the end of a long and winding road. It took me years of travelling through foreign lands before I came to be where I've always belonged. How did you become a paladin? A bitter smile appears on the half-orc's face. I don't much like to remember it. Believe it or not, the story of how I became a paladin is also the story of how I failed to become a knight. My parents were crusaders. May their souls stand together in Iomede's celestial army. When I was born, they retired from the war and started preparing me to continue their legacy. But my father was an orc. You'd be pressed to find a calmer, wiser and more pious servant of the goddess than he. But still, all his life he was dogged by sideways looks and whispers. When I grew older and it was time for me to serve, I decided anywhere but Kenabres. That was where my father had served loyally, and his only reward had been injustice. Besides, the witch hunters, led by the honourable prelate Halrun, stalked the city with a heavy hand. Who knows what they'd have done to a strange girl with a green skin? Instead, I went to... A smirk that looks more like a painful grimace crosses her face. You can laugh if you want, but I was young and foolish. I chose Lastwall of all places. You can imagine how well I was accepted in a country that's been battling the orcs of Belkzen since its foundation. There were many there like me, but we were all treated as second-class citizens. To the locals, my green skin was worse than leper scabs. Even my brothers in faith kept their distance. I took my vows, and the goddess granted me the powers of a paladin. But even then, not a single order would accept me into their ranks. I spent another 6 months knocking on doors before I realized a simple truth. I serve Iomede, not these people. I don't have to prostrate myself before them. So I left, as a paladin, but not a knight. It's probably hard for you as a human to imagine what it's like, and the very colour of your skin and the fangs in your mouth make people in the street turn on their heel to avoid you. I mean no offence, of course. How did you come to join a knightly order? I left Lastwall and went travelling. The goddess guided me and my path led me to where atrocities were happening. I often fought in exchange for gold, but never for unworthy aims, of course. I wandered the river kingdoms for a few years, killing monsters and tracking down criminals. Sometimes I thought I was just wasting time, that my true place was in Kenabres, but I pushed those thoughts away. I didn't even want to think about going back. But in the end, divine providence had brought me to my senses. It happened in Timon. I was tracking a gang of bandits, which my employer suspected was a cover for Asmirian spies. I managed to find their lair, but inside I found something far more dangerous than spies. An unholy temple to Zon Kuthon. When I broke in there, the cultists were about to sacrifice someone. The person who was destined to become my wife, Anivia, but that's another story. After I cut down the cultists, I examined their papers and couldn't believe my eyes. A network of evil cults had spread through all of Avistan, including Mendev. Worse, the documents clearly showed that their allies, the Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth, had infested my native Kenabres and were even among the ranks of the paladins. After that, delaying my homecoming would be tantamount to desertion. Luckily, I was no longer alone. Anivia was as eager to destroy the cultists as I was. Anivia and I hurried to Kenabres. We couldn't trust anyone. The papers indicated that the cultists had infiltrated everything. Luckily, I had some experience in investigation, and my beloved, the half-orc smiles warmly. She knew her way around working locks, tailing people, and trading information with the city's bottom feeders. Soon we'd defeated, alas not the whole Hydra, but a few of its heads. Do you know who turned out to be the leader of the cultists? The commander of the Eagle Watch. Can you imagine? While Prelate Halrun was chasing witches through the city, the enemy had infiltrated the very order responsible for internal security. The scandal reached the ears of the Queen. At first she planned to disband the order in disgrace, but then she offered its command to me and put its salvation in my hands. Of course, there was one small catch. I wasn't a knight, but I was made commander just the same, skipping the usual progression through the ranks. I can't imagine the followers of Zon Kuthon in alliance with the demon worshippers. Shouldn't they hate each other? They should, but Baphomet's minions are masters of deception. They manipulate Zon Kuthon's butchers as eagerly as Iomede's knights. The cultists from that unholy temple didn't know the true face of their associates in Canabras. We ourselves learned the truth much later, after getting to the bottom of their nest. How did the people of Canabras feel about your background? They tolerated it surprisingly well. I shouldn't have been so wary. Crusaders don't tend to be prejudiced as a rule. After all, heroes from all over the world, even from other continents, come here to fight the demons. Apparently, the people were only suspicious of full-blooded orcs. There were already many like me here, and we don't have any problems, though the locals do have their superstitions. Mendev is as merciless as Lastwall. They just have a different set of victims. I kept seeing those same sideways looks and scowls, hearing the familiar whispers. But where once they used to whisper behind my back and point at me, now they whisper in my ear and point at someone else. It's so strange to be on the other side of humiliation, to wipe the spit from your face and suddenly be invited to change position and spit at someone else. You must have figured out by now that I'm talking about tieflings. It's true, there are many of them among the cultists and few among our crusaders, and our fighters do all they can to drive away those who would be our allies. People shun them, call them Arilu's spawn or worse, as if they chose to be born like that. I believe it's quite a feat to rise against the call of one's blood and join the forces of good. Still, most only see them as the enemy. I once saw a knight bleeding to death because he wouldn't let a tiefling priest touch his wound. Alas, I have not been able to change this in all my time in Canabras. Tell me about Anivia. We met in Timon as I was wandering aimlessly from one ordeal to another. We returned to Canabras together to expose the tempers of the Ivory Labyrinth. The day the Queen knighted me was the second happiest day of my life. The first was the day of our wedding. But Anivia isn't just my beloved, she's my staunchest ally. We share every victory and defeat. The best of me is alive thanks to her. Thank you for saving her back then, the day Canabras fell. Before her return, the only thing giving me the strength to protect the Defender's heart was the hope that I'd see her again. We are in your debt. Thank you for your answers. Irabeth nods without saying a word. Tell me about the Eagle Watch. It was a small order created to fight not only demons, but also the enemy within, to maintain the purity of the paladin ranks, prevent heresy, and identify spies. And it failed miserably at that. The Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth infiltrated it and formed their nest within its ranks. After the Queen entrusted me with leading the order, Anivia and I practically built it from scratch. We got rid of deadweight, people who weren't committed. We organized ways to transmit messages and orders safely. We introduced reliable ciphers. We found tacit allies around the city, from crusader orders to street beggars. This was my personal crusade, to purge the city of the Templars who had infested it. And I thought I was winning. I could feel it. We were so close to driving the cultists out of Canabras. But... Irabeth frowns. It's hard to admit, but those successes didn't count for much once the demons entered the city. On the contrary, if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be a headquarters at Defender's Heart. The cultists would have served up the city on a platter to the demons. The lines on Irabeth's forehead soften. Yes, that's true. It's a good thing we achieved something. Thank you. I have to go. Go. May Iomade keep you safe. There's a book over here. Hilor and the Spinner of Nightmares. Let's just quickly look through these. You should be able to pause. I don't know, some of these may have scroll bars, like that one. That one doesn't. That one doesn't. Okay, next up then is the kitchen. Here we have Joran, a young man in well-worn travelling clothes and a simple wooden symbol of Erastil on his chest is efficiently cutting a linen robe into strips to use as bandages. Despite his visible exhaustion, he works with zeal, singing some tune about red braids and ripe sheaves of wheat under his breath. He raises his warm chestnut-coloured eyes to you. Are you one of the crusaders? Thank you for defending those of us whose talents lie off the battlefield. I am Joran, servant of Erastil. Pleased to meet you. What are you doing? I only took my holy orders recently, so my god has only bestowed a little of his power upon me as yet. I am sorry to say that the number of wounded fighters in this tavern is far beyond my power to heal, but there's a reason people say have faith in the gods, but look to yourself first. I may not be able to help the wounded with magic, but I can at least cut up bandages. Are you from around here? No, I was just passing through Canabras. I was sailing down that old man of ours, the great Sullen River, to a village by the name of Chili Creek. I happened to land in the city on the eve of the festival, and I'm ashamed to say I decided to stay for a day to enjoy myself. But I ended up staying in the city longer than I'd bargained for. Chili Creek, where is that? It's a small fishing village. It's not even marked on some maps. But people do live there. What they don't have is a priest. They have no one to heal their wounds, no one to offer prayers for a good catch, no one to give their dead a dignified burial. And the Worldwound is a stone's throw away. So I'll be setting sail for Chili Creek to serve my god and my people. Once we've held Canabras, I'll be going there. If by the grace of the good gods we all survive this, you should come and visit me sometime. You'll find the village here, on the bank of the river. The priest marks Chili Creek on your map. Aren't you, a young and inexperienced cleric, afraid to go to the border of the Worldwound? I won't lie, I am afraid, but what can I do? Those villagers are simple people like you and me. Every day of their short lives is spent doing hard, honest work, and that's exactly the kind of life I want. Something simple but meaningful. If I had centuries ahead of me like elves and some other races do, I might have spared some 50 years or so to travel around the world, the young man says with a smile. Or maybe even 100, why not? But I don't have time to spare, so I want to spend my short life in the place where I'm needed the most. Even if it's dangerous. Especially if it's dangerous. I could use the help of a cleric. Joran makes a helpless gesture. Erastil knows I'd be glad to help you, but it's no use. My spells are depleted and I have no training in potions or scrolls. See this robe I'm cutting up for bandages? It's the second to last one. I have to go. Erastil, watch over you. To take a quick break again. There we go. And then we have Foreign Autumn Haze. A tall, fragile-looking elf sits in front of you, eyes closed. He is pale as a ghost, his arm wrapped in a blood-stained bandage. You spot other bandages on his body under his clothes, but even in such a miserable state, he manages to keep calm. Raising his eyes to meet yours, he says faintly, I am Fawn Autumn Haze, at your service. His pale lips are reddened by blood, but you see no signs of pain or fear in his grey eyes. Do you need help? After giving you a cold, intense look, he shakes his head. Do not trouble yourself on my behalf. A local healer tended to. Besides, I come from a resilient, hardy people. My body will endure both the wounds and the poison delivered through them. I'm Caledon, you can trust me, I might be able to help you. After a brief pause, Fawn says, it would be impolite to refuse such a direct and friendly offer. Who is your quarry here, Mended? I was hunting a fugitive. a Descarite by the name of Kaelessa. It pains me to admit that there are heinous malefactors such as her among my noble kind. I managed to catch up to her in Canabras, and I wounded her. Then demons appeared, and the city was engulfed in flames. I was injured in the battle that ensued and couldn't free her soul from its service to her dark masters. He expresses no anger or hatred as he speaks, only compassionate sorrow. I'm sorry for your misfortune. I hope things will turn out differently next time. He purses his lips. There is no need for pity. Our ancient kind is blessed with great longevity. We gain a deeper understanding of the world than other races, and we learn our lessons better than anyone. That goes for learning from our mistakes as well. I survived, which means I will be more prepared when next we meet. I wish to aid you in your hunt. Fawn covers his eyes wearily. I thank you, but this is my mission, and I'm used to facing all manners of terrors on my own. I do appreciate your willingness to help. If you happen to meet Kaelessa, take caution. She has turned many innocent souls to the path of evil, and darkness has rewarded her with many gifts. Her appearance alone will tell you that. It is warped. The agate skin, the malicious stare of her blood-red eyes, the bestial teeth. She is more monster than elf at this point. I doubt we'll get able to get this one right. We need a natural 20. What does this Kaelessa look like again? Her skin is dark, her hair preternaturally white. Her red eyes can see perfectly in the dark, which to my dismay I've come to know from experience. But bright light causes her kind pain. I used an alchemical powder that explodes in a dazzling flash, and she cried out as if I had stabbed her. While my character has failed, I can say without doubt that this means that she is a drow. And that was probably what the Knowledge World skill check was about. It's clear that this woman is a faithful servant of darkness. The marks that Kaelessa's masters have left on her appearance say as much. I'd like to know more about you. I won't hold anything back. Not who I am, why I made my way here, or who it is that I'm pursuing. Tell me more about yourself. Other peoples tend to believe that identity is the sum of a person's actions and the events that happened to them. For them, I am one of a long line of warriors of Caonin, who, since his youth, has dedicated himself to hunting evil and injustice. For them, I am a successful and capable huntsman who has tracked down and slain a great many monsters. But I am an elf, and for me, my identity has a different meaning. It is shaped by the place where I was born, and that I love so deeply. I am shaped by what I find beautiful and what makes my heart quicken, by the fears that come to me in the dead of night, by the things I find so intolerable that at the sight of them my very core darkens and fills with poison. Thus, to tell you who I am, I would require many days and much candor, which is more than you and I have at our disposal. Why did you choose to be a hunter of evil? Because I am the son of a noble and proud nation. We are sometimes criticized for our arrogance, but no one dares doubt our honor. When a crime is committed, we cannot turn a blind eye. If we were to abandon our obligation to oppose evil, if we were to surrender this obligation to other races, we would also relinquish our preeminence. Remind me, who is the courier that brought you to Mendel? Heard that before? Refresh my memory. That before? Actually, no. That miscreant, unfortunately, is of the elven race. In the blessed shade of Caonin, she swore herself to the faith of Discari and set out on her criminal path in his name. Darkness rewarded her with great powers and repulsive disfigurement, so she could no longer hide her sins. Kaelessa fled here to be closer to her master, and I followed her. I have no more questions. As you wish. I have to go. Good fortune to you. I think that is all the conversations we have up in this floor here. Just double checking. Well, there is Indara over here. An imposing young Oread is surrounded by a crowd of crusaders who are hanging on to her every word. I hope this example clearly illustrates the difference between the Gistka legionnaires from the last wars and the crusaders. The perfection of form and spirit they were imbued with during creation turned them into parts of a well-balanced war machine, not a ragtag bunch of individuals, but a united whole. Now tell me again why I'm supposed to be impressed by your reckless assaults where everyone is fighting for their ego and for the right to beat their peers to a swift but pointless heroic sacrifice. Some of the crusaders grumble unhappily, but it is clear that they are captivated by the woman's words. The only exception is a scraggly and dishevelled halfling monk whose puffy black eye gives him away as a brawler and a troublemaker. He enthusiastically pushes forward and tries to engage, but one of his friends swiftly jabs him in the back with an elbow, making the poor fellow pause to catch his breath. The poor fellow seemed to be stuck underneath the horse, which is kind of unfortunate, but what can you do? Quietly listen to the discussion. One of the crusaders angrily curls his fists tightly and retorts with a burst of passion. If those gists of yours, or whatever, had come for us, we'd have their guts for garters. You'd think we've never fought a mighty adversary before? The soldier's stern facade cannot fully conceal his relish. He clearly plans to enjoy this confrontation. The crusaders around him look upon their exotic opponent with a mixture of irritation and piqued interest. The woman chuckles before cutting off her interlocutor. I would love to see you storm a 60-foot tall walking castle shaped like a gigantic elephant that carries siege fortifications on its back, and I'll have you know, these fortifications were defended by Giskan priest craftsmen armed with demon-bound war machines. They used the enemies you cannot defeat as mindless weapons. The woman gives the people around her a triumphant look and adjusts her clothes with pointed nonchalance. Her voice takes on a lecturer's tone. You should not argue with someone who happens to be the most authoritative researcher on the history of warfare 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. The woman looks at you and flashes an amused smile. The lecture is over. Do my esteemed listeners have any questions? You are wrong to treat the Crusaders with such disdain. Allow me to explain. A debate? Oh, I will be happy to prove that the current conflict cannot hold a candle to the last war of Gistka. Very well. The last war of Gistka was waged using a significantly greater number of troops. Both sides actively relied on reinforcement from allied planes, and their strategic planning was perfected through no fewer than 7 rounds of intensive designs. None of the above applies to this war of yours. Compared to Gistka, we are but stone club-wielding kobolds. I would like to conclude my thesis with a few words of wise counsel from Dagoon, an advisor to the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues. I doubt you will comprehend the true genius of his statement, but here it is, nevertheless. A gadfly sees the ox. The ox pays no heed to the gadfly, but crimson fever takes them both. I think we'll go with this one because, yeah. The events of the past are shrouded in legend, but the fate of the world is being decided here and now. That is what you fail to grasp. Failed, of course. Said he, standing in the middle of a dingy tavern. Indara graciously accepted the chuckling of her audience. One mustn't overestimate the importance of current events for world history. Should Kenarbris fall, it will become yet another page in the chronicles of the Worldwound conflict. Should it endure, it will be fortunate to earn any mention at all. The monk with the black eyes stifles a giggle and looks like he wants to say something, but ultimately holds himself back. The principles of war are always the same. Weapons, causes, and resources may change, but the foundations remain immutable. That one I succeed. Indara's eyes display frustration as she hears the audience, clearly impressed by her argument, murmuring approval. There is logic in your words, I give you that. Yes, the concept of war does not change, but the degree of sophistication in the methods that we use to destroy our foes. The woman stops, realizing her words. No matter how ostentatious she makes them, no longer have the power to captivate the audience. Indara offers a pretentious dismissal. As a scholar, I cannot deny that there is a certain truth beneath your skeptical statements. History is a complex discipline rooted in fact and an evidentiary base that grows ever more meagre the farther the described period is from the present moment. Of course, if I were to argue in bad faith, the way crusaders embellish their tales of slaying a single Brimarak by adding a dozen Balors, for example, I could win this debate. But I am above such things, and therefore I am forced to admit that your skepticism is not entirely without merit. I am sure you would have been able to expound on your arguments in a longer discussion. Indara nods with obvious relief. I am glad we both understand this limitation. It is always a pleasure to face a worthy opponent, even if the debate takes place in a grimy tavern. Perhaps especially because of that. Indara unbuckles her sword belt and hands you the weapon. This is a worthy blade. It will be of use not only for the strong, but also for the wise. Oh, get the Glove Discard. I'm glad I managed that, because that is an important weapon early on. And this is where I bid you farewell. Before the end of the day, I was planning to observe how winged demons use pack tactics to drive their prey like herds of livestock. It is about time I got back to my research. A hint of a smile graces Indara's lips when she sees disappointment in the eyes of the many crusaders around her. Stay safe. The Claw of Jistka is pretty decent flaming short sword. So I'm actually quite happy that I got that, because that is definitely a good one. And I'm also glad that I went out here and had a look around again. Okay, so we need to go down into the basement, and that should be the final part of this episode.
I'll go ahead.
Need to wait for Peps to come along. Surrender thy soul, Delvin. Iomade, protect us. I got you again. How many times is that today? Take your jokes and shove 'em, tiefling. Whoa, easy there, chief. Don't hit me. Go ahead. Don't take too long, though.
Hey, Chief. Hey, Dreamboat, come over here. I want to talk to you about something. Something really important.
My voice is gratified that this is voiceovered.
Quit bothering the decent people in here, Woljif, or I'll knock your teeth out.
What's it to you, Delvin Dum-Dum? You were told to guard me, and I'm not stopping you. But no one told me I had to shut my trap.
Who are you?
Woljif. Woljif Jefto. I deal in useful things. I can get you whatever you want. Anything. But there's just one problem.
What do you want from me?
I'll lay it out for you. Simple job, 30 minutes tops. We go someplace, talk to someone, and in return, whatever you want, I'll get it for you. Some extra rations? No problem. Armor, weapons, scrolls, you name it. It's as good as yours. If you need my help with something, whistle and I'll be there. I'm handy enough with knives too, and even my magic know-how isn't too shabby.
What a load of guff. If you were good at magic, you wouldn't be stuck in here now, would you?
Don't you listen to him, Chief. He'd find fault with the Queen herself. I'll be useful to have in battle, and I'll sell whatever you want at a reasonable price. It's your lucky day. You won't meet another gem like me in Canabras.
Why are you in chains?
Does it really matter? Don't get hung up on the past, Chief. Don't look to the future. Live in the here and now.
He was caught thieving.
Your shadow. What was that?
Get me out of here and I'll tell you. And don't worry, it's not contagious.
I can't help you while you're chained up in here. How can I free you?
That's easy. You know Irabeth? Feisty looking gal, always wears armor. You can't miss her, she's the meanest fighter in the whole city. When you see her, put in a good word for me, will ya? Tell her there's this guy Woljif locked up for no good reason in the Defender's Heart. Well, for the follies of his youth. And he really wants to get out on bail so he can keep up his good behavior and make a contribution to society. You got that? Will you do it?
Sounds trustworthy. Alright, I'll talk to Irabeth about your situation.
I knew I could count on you. Knew it the moment I laid eyes on you.
We'll talk later. Okay, I'm going to go back up again. There is a puzzle in this basement. I'll do that in the next episode. So I'll leave it there as is for now. There is a tiefling chained up in the Defender's Heart. What can you tell me about him? Irabeth shrugs scornfully. Woljif is a petty thief from a gang of thieflings operating in Canabras. That's what we call them in these parts. They tried to rob a vendor of magical items recently. Unfortunately, we apprehended only one of them, and the rest managed to escape. We have nowhere else to keep him apart from the Defender's Heart, but that's hardly a prison. Woljif knows it too. He's been begging us for days to let him go free or have someone vouch for him. He's already asked you to put in a good for him, hasn't he? Irabeth squints at you thoughtfully, then shrugs. If you want to recruit Woljif and put him to good use, go ahead and take him off our guard's hands. We can ill afford to let a soldier spend their days watching over a middling thief. I hope the tiefling proves useful, should you decide to take him along. I have to go. Go, may Aomade keep you safe. Right, now I'll recruit Woljif at the beginning of the next episode. I don't think there's... Oh, there is one more person that we have to talk to. Let's see here. At least I think there's only one person.
Follow my lead.
Yeah, there we go. Joran Vane, Staunton's brother. A grizzled dwarf turns a blade in his calloused hands, carefully inspecting its edge. When he sees you approaching, he sets the blade aside and greets you with a nod. A new face in the city. You picked a good time to come to Canabras. As you can see, we're in sore need of warriors. Show radiance to Joran. Do you recognize this sword? Do I recognize it? Of course I do. I made this with my own hands. There's my brand, see? The dwarf carefully takes the sword in his hands, gazing at it like a doting father. Oh, Yaniel, things have been tough without you, but at least we still got your sword. That's something. Joran returns the sword to you. In battle, ordinary swords get blunted, they break, but sometimes a weapon can preserve. I don't even know how to explain it, I'm no authority on these things, but something like an echo of the deeds done with that weapon? Or more like the reflection of the wielder's soul? I don't know. I will say one thing. Take care of that sword. Yaniel may no longer be with us, but the demons will still remember why they need to turn tail and run when they see radiance. Ugh, the scabbard's all worn. We can't be having a fine sword like this being carried around in this tatty thing. I'll make you a new one, if you like. If the city stands strong and we both survive, come see me again, I'll have it ready. No charge. Do you know everyone in Canabras by sight? Well, not everyone, but I make it my business to know the people who might need my services. A blacksmith's work isn't just at the anvil, you know. Are you Staunton Vane's brother? Yep. Where he goes, I go. That's how we've always done it, even before the Worldwound. I forge the armor, he goes into battle and breaks it, he brings it back to me, and I repair it and make it better than before. Everything's changed since then, of course, but that part has stayed the same. How was Staunton to blame for the fall of Dresden? I've told this story so many times already. Well, telling it one more time won't kill me. The blacksmith sighs. Dresden was built after the First Crusade, back when it seemed like the victory was ours for the taking, and that the demon invasion would soon be at an end. Population of old Sarkoris was thoroughly diminished, and many of them hoped to see their hard fighting repaid with a small plot of unclaimed land. Dresden was a fortress built on all our hopes, and on Mendev's ambitions, though you're not supposed to say that out loud. What a city it was, Caledon. You can't even imagine. It was built by the finest engineers from the Five Kings Mountains. Queen Galfrey spared no expense. Dresden was meant to be the capital of the Crusade movement, a monument to its glory and a beacon of hope for all Golarion. Heroes were drawn there to seek fame and glory, and they came from all over. Taldor, Garund, Tianxia, I couldn't list them all. A relic known as the Sword of Valor was kept there. The banner that had been carried into battle by Iomedae herself, back when she was still human. That banner protected the city and kept the demons from teleporting inside its walls. As long as the banner was in its place, Dresden was invincible, so we thought. But then, the Worldwound suddenly expanded. The demons launched a new onslaught and folk started saying it was time to declare the Second Crusade. Dresden was unassailable, until one young officer was tempted by a beautiful woman. She convinced him that the banner shouldn't be hanging in the city, that its rightful place was on the battlefield. She whispered honeyed words about glory and valor and convinced him that he could be a hero as great as Iomedae herself. And the poor fool believed her. He rounded up some of his hot-headed friends and carried the banner outside the city gates on an unauthorized foray. The demons slaughtered them within seconds. For some reason, the courageous ringleader was spared. A whole army teleported into Dresden. It was a bloodbath. Joran solemnly shakes his head. As you can guess, that officer was called Staunton Dane, and the woman turned out to be a demon. Not just any demon, it was Minago, that foul wretch. She's given us a lot of grief here in Kenabres too. Just don't ask me what I was doing while my brother was off having trysts with that beast, and why I didn't save him from his own stupidity. The blacksmith gestures as if to ward off the inevitable reprobation. Who could have guessed it would end like this? I've failed my brother, that's the truth. Blame myself every day looking at his plight. So, that's the story. Why do you have your forge here in the tavern yard? Wherever I am, that's where my forge is. A true master of any craft will always find the tools they need. I miss my old forge, of course. It's now just a pile of charred stone and metal. But I've still got my hands, and that means I can work. Show me your wares. So, a couple of interesting items here. Not that I can afford any of them. There's a lot of weapons. There's some armor. Decent armor as well. That could be useful. Okay, well, I'm going to sell the regular masterwork items and armor to him, but I'll do that in between episodes. So this should be the end of the lore episode, so the next episode should be episode number 6, where we actually go recruit Woljif to the party and go out into the city. But if you have any comments and or questions, then please do feel free to leave those in the comment section below, and thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you all in the next episode.